Real estate taxes are inevitable if you own real estate, but they are not always understood. I'll talk with real estate tax experts right now on The Law Works.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Closed captioning for The Law Works is made possible by a grant from the Monongalia County Bar Association to support legal information and education for all West Virginians. The Law Works is made possible by a major grant from the West Virginia Bar Foundation, the philanthropic organization for West Virginia's legal profession and legal system, promoting public knowledge of the law in West Virginia. By the generous support of Software Systems Incorporated, a West Virginia company established in 1975, providing high-end support services, programming, and consulting for county government AS400 mid-range computer systems, as well as PC-based systems. And by viewers like you.
If you own real estate, you know that a significant expense of the ownership is the annual payment of real estate taxes. My guests are Levada Williamson, President of the Ritchie County, West Virginia Commission, and Michael Manley, President and CEO of Software Systems and a former member of the West Virginia Appraisal Review and Control Commission's Computer Technology Subcommittee. Mike, Levada, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
Real estate property taxes, is there an easy way to say what they are?
In 100 words or less?
Let's try to keep it to 25.
I guess best way to put it is it's the tax that's assessed by the state on the property you own based on the value of the property that you own.
Why do we have them?
Generally speaking, we have property taxes for the support of schools and the support of local governments.
That's how we pay for schools, is real estate taxes?
Real estate taxes primarily is used for the support of schools. The biggest part of your taxes levied go to boards of education.
Well, it seems like we've always had taxes, but in West Virginia, the tax structure has changed, especially property taxes, in the last 2 or 3 decades. Mike, how has that happened?
Well, back in the early 80s, a group of parents, school students in Lincoln County, filed suit against the Board of Education because they didn't think that their students were getting the right kind of education, and they felt that there was something the Board of Education should be able to do about it. As this went through the court process, it ended up with the Supreme Court, and the net effect of this was a ruling by a judge that was brought in from Ohio County, Judge Arthur Recht, and he laid out his interpretation or the court's interpretation of the Constitution and how this was all supposed to work. And what he said was it wasn't the responsibility of the superintendent of the schools in Lincoln County, it was the responsibility ultimately of the tax commissioner to see that taxes were levied correctly across the state so that each school got the right kind of funding, or got an equivalent amount of funding relative to the other schools and to the location it was in.
The basic complaint of the Lincoln County parents was, our schools are not educating our children correctly, we want you to fix that, or completely, we want you to fix that. And the school board's position basically was, we're doing the best that we can with the money that we've got, we just don't have enough assets in Lincoln County to generate enough taxes to pay for a thorough and efficient school. The West Virginia Constitution requires that students in West Virginia, that the counties in West Virginia provide a thorough and efficient system of free public education, a worthwhile goal, and one that's not as easy to meet as it is to say.
Right.
And apparently in Lincoln County and some other counties that were not heavily industrialized or heavily populated just weren't generating enough revenues to pay for a thorough and efficient school system. So Judge Recht mandated some changes.
Yeah, he mandated that the governor and the legislature come up with a solution to the problem. Ultimately, what was determined, I think it was about a 200-page decision that the judge issued, and he identified a lot of things that he felt were wrong with the process. One of them was that property was being valued in different ways in different places, and he felt that to provide consistent education across the state, all the property in the state should be valued the same way. At the time he went through this, he also said that this needed to be controlled by somebody, and that somebody was the state tax commissioner. So part of his ruling was that they implement a computerized system. And if you remember, this is in the early 80s, before personal computers even existed. A computerized system that would have a table-driven kind of process where if you had a piece of property on Main Street and someone else had a piece of property on Main Street, they were valued the same.
Not the same value. But
Not the same value. The
method
same,
of valuing
right,
them
the same
is
methodology.
method.
And then they also recognized that Main Street in Charleston, West Virginia was different than Main Street in some rural town in West Virginia. So they had location factors and some other variables that they put in to these formulas. But they mandated essentially that a computerized system be implemented to do this, and that all the assessors in the state would go through a reappraisal process. That reappraisal process was funded by the legislature at the time, and the company that won the bid to implement the software and do the reappraisal was charged with training people in all the counties to assess property the same way. So through this process, the intent was to equalize the property valuation, equalize the tax collection throughout the state, and put everybody on a level playing field as far as education goes.
Is that what we do today?
That same process is still in place. Those same computer elements are still there. The systems have been upgraded over the years, and I think a little of the control has eased its way back into the assessor's offices, but there still is a state database that maintains all the property in the state and a set of tables that value that property based on its characteristics equally across the state.
Well, Uveda, who makes the determination then concerning the property values, that they are correct, or how do they gather these factors?
When the county assessor compiles the values, they have an oversight committee on the state level, state tax department does. It's called the Property Training Committee, and they are the oversight committee for the county assessor's office. Those values, when they're certified, the books are turned over to the county commission. The county commission reviews those books. We set as a board of review and equalization to determine if there are any errors and finally certify the books as correct.
It's the step, though, I guess, that the assessor takes to say, does the assessor actually say this is how much the property is worth, or does the assessor identify which factors apply to a particular piece of property?
They identify the factors through the tables, through the computer system. They'll take your house and identify, whether it has 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, size of lot, and what have you, and that's keyed into the system, and then they are given a value to use as the market value based on the tables.
So it's the assessor's job to describe the property, and then the computers work their magic.
The computers work their magic and apply these tables so that that 3-story office building on Main Street is valued differently than the 2-story office building on that same Main Street, but both of those are valued differently than Main Street properties in another community which might have a different location factor.
Or a house,
on
Elm Street.
Right. Exactly.
Well, we hear about reassessments and property values changing. What happens that property values change?
Well, the biggest factor is the driving element in this is market value. It's what houses sell for. That's what everyone considers as the value of your house. What could you sell it for, or what would someone willingly pay for it? So as the economy changes, as housing prices go up, people's property values go up. As other things happen in the community, maybe a road goes through that wasn't there before, and now you have more accessibility. Maybe a mall's built next to your property, and it changes some of these location factors. Then your value also changes because the market value of your house should have changed at that point.
And that can really create some rude awakenings for a property owner.
Absolutely.
Probably the classic story would be, and we're not talking about just property that's located in towns, although that's what we've discussed at this point. Farmer Jones buys a nice little piece of property where he raises corn and maybe a couple of kids and an animal or two in 1950, and he pays $10,000 or $20,000 for it, which to him in 1950 was a lot of money. But he lives there from 1950 to 2012, and all of a sudden he gets a letter from the, I guess from the assessor, that says your property is no longer worth $20,000, it's now worth $4 million, and he is just in shock. But the passage of time brought development in his community, and maybe there is a mall now built next door, and the value of his real estate has just gone through the roof.
Right.
It's not a little family farm anymore. It's now highly desirable commercial property.
Exactly.
What can he do about that, Levita?
Well, he could sell his property for the
Right.
$4 million.
But he doesn't want to. We're talking about real estate taxes in West Virginia. My guests are Levita Williamson, president of the Ritchie County Commission, and Michael Manley, a former member of the West Virginia Appraisal Review and Control Commission's Computer Technology Subcommittee. I'm Dan Ringer, and this is The Law Works. The next time you get on a committee, get on one with a short name.
It wasn't my choice.
You could say ACRC, but,
But
no one know what that
remembers
means.
Well, what we're talking about is there any avenue for someone whose property values, he has been told, just went through the roof, to protest or negotiate the real estate taxes? What can they do?
Generally, when you have a property owner that is dissatisfied with the value that's been placed on their property, they try to meet with the county assessor. This is what happens in Ritchie County and many other counties. They try to meet with the county assessor to see first, are there any errors that exist? Do you have my house on there with more bedrooms and pools and what have you that really just don't exist? And try to make those corrections to see if that will help the value. If they cannot work out their disagreement regarding the value with the county assessor, the property owner may appear before the Board of Review and Equalization, the County Commission, in February to contest the appraisal. Generally, what a county commission is looking for when a property owner comes before them to contest their appraisal is a like appraisal or information that other houses of similar stance have different values in their communities. So they appear before the Board of Review and Equalization.
So let's assume I get a letter from the assessor, which I did, incidentally. It's one of the reasons why we're doing this program, that says your property values have increased 10%, 100%, 300%. And I look at that and I say, well, I disagree with this. Can I come to the county commission after talking to the assessor's people and not being satisfied and come in and say, it's just not right? Look at how much this has gone up, lower it? Is that going to work?
No, that won't work in most counties, and it certainly wouldn't work in Ritchie, but you need some sort of factual evidence that demonstrates that the value is incorrect, that it does not represent true market value.
Okay, and you mentioned the phrase like appraisal. That would be an appraisal performed by a licensed real estate appraiser who would presumably do a fair market analysis and say this house, if it were to be sold, should sell for, this house or this property should sell for X number of dollars, which presumably would be less than what the assessor just told the county commission it was going to be put on the tax books at. And I could bring that appraisal in and show it to you.
Right.
The bad news is that appraisal can cost several $100s to have performed.
That is the bad news, and admittedly, often property owners will go to their local realtor, which may or may not be a licensed appraiser, but at least you have some inclination of what the property value would be if you have your realtor look at it.
Realtors will often look at property, well, typically will look at property that you want to sell and say, here's what we think the asking price for the property ought to be. And that's not a real appraisal. It's at best an educated guess at what the property value is. So it is some evidence. It's not compelling evidence, but it's, I suppose, better than nothing.
Right.
Barely. Or you can look at what the property around you is
That's correct.
worth. Mike, one of the wonderful things that has happened in recent years is that tax information is available to people.
Yes.
It's public information.
Right. Well, it's always been public information. Before computers, all this information was typed on books that are called property books. If you've been to the courthouse, you've seen them. They're about this wide, and they have a minimal amount of information about the property, but basically they tell you what the property was valued at, who the owner is, and what the taxes are. In recent years, that's all been computerized, and as part of this statewide computerization with the reappraisal that was done back in the 80s, they made this information electronically available to tax offices. So the tax offices now do their collections on information that's passed electronically to them. Before this time, the tax office would pick up a property book, sit down with a typewriter, and type a tax ticket for you or a tax bill for you and send it out in the mail. So now this is all done electronically. Was part of the growth of the internet, we've been able to pull this information from the tax office's files and display it on the internet as well.
Are all counties in West Virginia doing that now?
Not all of them, no. I would say probably about half of them have that capability now. There are political reasons that some counties don't want to show that information, or some sheriffs don't want to put that information out. There's a cost element associated with it as well. But basically, it's a real time saver for citizens who want to look and see if their taxes are paid, for attorneys who want to close on a piece of property to see if the tax has been paid, for lending institutions to make sure that the person that they have a mortgage for has paid their taxes, or that someone has paid the taxes. So there's a real advantage to it.
It is a tremendous time saver, but a lot of people object to that information being available on the internet because there's a privacy concern in some people's minds. They don't want other people snooping into their financial affairs, and certainly the payment of real estate taxes are part of your financial affairs. What is not recognized, though, by at least some of those folks is you can get the same information by going to the courthouse.
Absolutely.
All you need to know is the name of the person who owns the property that you're looking at, and there are even ways to find that out at the courthouse if you don't know that. But if you want to know what Dan Ringer's paying in his real estate taxes, you go down to the sheriff's tax office and say, let me see the tax records. And they'll show them to you because they have to, because it's public information. We're talking about real estate taxes in West Virginia. My guests are Levada Williamson, president of the Ritchie County Commission, and Michael Manley, a former member of the West Virginia Appraisal Review and Control Commission's Computer Technology Subcommittee. I'm Dan Ringer, and this is The Law Works. We should mention, Mike, I didn't mention at the top of the show, that your company underwrites, in part,
Yes.
The Law Works. So
Yes.
if you have a reason to know why he's here, it's because he's a friend of ours. The
Well-
fact that you know about this is important, too.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't have me here for a lot of other shows. One of the things that you mentioned, the ability to look up your taxes online. We have a website that all the counties that work with us participate in, and it's wvpropertytaxes.com.
That's all one word, WVPROPERTYTAXES, West Virginia, WVpropertytaxes.com. And a number of counties are there.
Right. What that does is brings up a map of the state, and you can see the counties that are shown in blue are the ones that have this information online. You can click on that county, and it will connect you directly to that county's computer system. It's not going through anybody else. Real-time data. So if somebody's at the courthouse paying their taxes, you can check the amount due. You can check 3 seconds after they pay their taxes, and the amount due will have gone to zero, and they will show paid.
Well, we've talked about how we value property, but the key factor is what you multiply that property value by to find out what your taxes are, and that's called the levy rate. Levada, where does this levy rate come from?
It's set by statute. There was the reappraisal of the 80s, but in the 90s, the legislature implemented a code that required county commissions, municipalities, levying bodies to reduce or roll back, what's called roll back their levy rate should assessed values hit a certain level. Generally, that's if that assessed value, if using the same rate that they currently levy on property taxes is used, if it generates more greater than a 1% increase, then the levy rate must be reduced so that it doesn't generate more than that 1% increase.
But that's not 1% increase on my taxes.
That's countywide.
So it's the average
It's the total amount.
Total
total
amount.
amount.
It's not by individual property owners. That's absolutely correct. So while it might just generate a 1% increase countywide for you as an individual property owner, if your property was just reappraised this year, you may see a greater increase in your property taxes.
And in some counties that happens. The mall being built next to the farm really
Exactly.
does drive property values up, so individual taxes go up, but somebody else's values may have gone down or not changed at all, so the levy rate doesn't change very much. It's not an individual matter, it's a countywide average matter. Well, how come my taxes, I live in town, how come my taxes living in town are higher than somebody's taxes who just lives over the city limits? Same kind of houses, but they're not paying as much.
You really have three separate levying bodies. You have the county commission, you have the school board, and if you live in a rural district, for example, you're going to pay a levy rate based on the levy rate set for the county and the school board. But if you live within the corporate limits, for example, if you live within the corporate limits of Morgantown, that levying body has the authority to establish another levy rate to operate city government on top of the county and the school board. So you're paying state, county, school, and municipal.
As I understand it, we pay a tax for the privilege of living in a well-organized society, one that has fire departments, schools, hospitals, if they're public hospitals, streets, and we have to pay the entities who provide those things. So if we live in Ritchie County, in the county, not in a town, there are services provided by the county commission and we are taxed for those services. If we choose to live in a town in Ritchie County, say Harrisville, it's county seat in Ritchie County, the town of Harrisville provides services and we are taxed additionally for the provision of those services. And then the third factor is schools. How do schools figure into this formula?
For the school board, the property tax levy rates for school boards are set on a statewide average. In the case, you'll recall, in the case of a county commission or municipality, they set their levy rates based on certain maximums, that 1% increase. With the school boards, they still are allowed a 1% increase, but instead of that levy rate being calculated on the values for those individual counties, they're based on a statewide value for all school boards. And the legislature, that is done through the state legislature.
My county Board of Education has asked us to vote on a school bond. How is my vote on the school bond going to affect my property taxes?
There's no doubt your property taxes will increase if you have a school bond levy, and it all depends on the amount of the bond. There are small bond levies. Normally, the bond levy, you're building a new school, so you're looking at multi-million-dollar bond levy. So yes, your taxes will increase significantly, and generally significantly.
I have seen some counties where the amount of the school levy equaled the amount of the property taxes for municipality and for the county. Does that frequently happen?
Yes, yeah, it exceeds. Generally, when you add your school current, most schools have excess levies, and you add your school current, your school excess, and a school bond, it generally exceeds. For example, in Ritchie County, the school board portion of the total levy for state, county, and school is 62%, and where the county commissions is 38%.
So 62% of my taxes in
Right.
Ritchie County go to pay for the schools.
That's correct.
Now, you may be saying to yourself, I don't have any children, why should I have to pay this? It's because the children are going to be the leaders, they're the citizens we're educating, And a well-educated citizenry is a benefit to you, whether any of those kids are yours or not. Laveda Williamson, Mike Manley, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you also for being with us. On behalf of the LawWorks, I'm Dan Ringer. Good evening. On the LawWorks website at thelawworks.org, you'll find a listing of recent The LawWorks programs, additional information about this show's topic, and video of this and recent shows. You can also find the LawWorks programs on YouTube and iTunes. If you would like to suggest a topic for a future The LawWorks show, or if you're a school teacher and would like to receive a DVD of this show for classroom use, send us email at thelawworks@comcast.net or visit us on Facebook.
The LawWorks is produced in cooperation with the West Virginia Bar Foundation, the Mountain State Bar, the Monongalia County Bar Association, and the West Virginia University College of Law. The LawWorks is made possible by a major grant from the West Virginia Bar Foundation, the philanthropic organization for West Virginia's legal profession and legal system, promoting public knowledge of the law in West Virginia. By the generous support of Software Systems Incorporated, a West Virginia company established in 1975, providing high-end support services, programming, and consulting for county government AS400 mid-range computer systems, as well as PC-based systems. And by viewers like you.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.